Good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to see so many people have joined us this evening to see Dr. Russell. My name is Emily Butler. I'm principal at St. Theresa School. I have with me Mr. Andre Liswick from Notre Dame and Ms. Stephanie Cercelli from St. Thomas Aquinas. We are working through some technical difficulties at the moment. We are trying to get Dr. Russell on our call promptly, and we will be back just as soon as we can iron out the kinks. So again, thank you for your patience and welcome.
Hi, yeah, I was just about to call you. You there?
Are you there, doctor?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll do it again. I mean, when I go to the calendar, I have Dr. Alex Russell parent presentation. I go down, it says Microsoft Teams join live event. There's a long blue link, and underneath it, it says join as producer or presenter when it's time for the live event. Then it says do not forward this invite and goes on to do other things and offers.
That's right.
Okay.
So click on that invite where it says join as a presenter.
Yeah, it's just above where it says that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I've been clicking on.
You have been.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, now I can hear you. Now, guys, I can hear you.
Yes.
No. Now I'm hearing a recording of us coming back at me, but just now. Okay. Listen, I think we can hang up on the phone. I think we're connected online now.
I can't see your camera, doctor.
Pardon?
I cannot see you. I can hear you through your phone.
Now I'm hearing a recording of us coming back at me.
I can share your audio. Do you want to speak to, we can begin and. Your camera, doctor?
I can't see my camera. Can't see my camera.
I can share your audio. Do you want to speak to, we can begin and. I can't see my camera.
I don't know what to do. What would you like me to do?
Let's begin the presentation, and they can hear you, doctor, and hear your advice. I think they can hear us now anyways, 85 participants. So what I'm going to do, Dr. Russell.
Yep, I'm right here. Should I hang up the phone?
Nope. Nope. Stay on the line.
Okay.
Let's begin the presentation, and they can hear you, doctor, and hear your advice. I think they can hear us now anyways, 85 participants. So what I'm going to do, Dr. Russell.
Yeah, I'm right here. I'm listening to two conversations. They're different. Andre, should we talk on the phone and not on the program? Boy, am I ever getting confused here. Andre, are you still on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I've turned my volume down on my computer. It was just getting me too confused.
There was a bit of a delay. So for people that are listening, I have some people that can hear us. So we're going to begin, doctor.
Okay. But
I'm going to have Emily introduce you.
But Andre, am I going to talk into my phone or into my computer?
Into your phone.
Okay. Okay.
Perfect.
Great.
So I'm putting Emily on live to do an introduction for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience as we work through some kinks. Welcome, Dr. Russell. I'm glad we were able to get everybody on board tonight. So tonight we are very excited to welcome Dr. Alex Russell. Dr. Alex Russell is a clinical psychologist who lives and works in Toronto. He provides assessments and psychotherapy to children and adults, in addition to consulting with schools, teachers, and psychologists. He is a trainer for the Sick Kids Centre for Community Mental Health and has been a consultant to the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. His past research activities include the development and evaluation of early intervention family therapy programs serving families with children at risk, articles on children's emotional development, and serving on the editorial board of Ideas, Emotional Well-Being in Childcare, a National Journey of Early Childhood Educators. The heart of his message is that children learn through the experience of non-catastrophic, painful failure, and it is through the process of these failures that they mature into resilient, resourceful, and emotionally balanced individuals. Parents need to see failing, whether it's a test, a course, or a tryout for a team, as a normal part of growing up and not a sign of parental incompetence. In his best-selling book, Drop the Worry Ball, How to Parent in the Age of Entitlement, and in his training, Dr. Russell offers a fresh perspective on raising children that is reassuringly familiar and strikingly sensible. As a speaker, Dr. Russell has addressed many parent, teacher, and counselor groups over the years. He is intimately familiar with the culture of the school system and the relationship that parents, teachers, and counselors share with regard to the children we are raising. He has been an active parent in his community and an avid hockey player and coach. So I've been fortunate to see Dr. Russell speak on several occasions. I know that you are in for a wonderful evening here with him tonight. There is a question and answer section that should be on the right-hand side of your screen. If you have questions that come up, please type them into the question box, and Dr. Russell will be answering questions at the end of our evening, the last 20 minutes. So without further ado, I welcome Dr. Alex Russell.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for bearing with us through all of that. Thank you, Andre, for staying so calm and patient. I found that utterly nerve-wracking. I was completely stressed out. And I say that to thank you, Andre, but also as a way of introducing a main topic for us this evening. We are going to be talking about anxiety. So maybe it wasn't the end of the world that we all got to witness a really stressful moment. And we are going to be thinking about anxiety tonight, guys. Thanks for coming out tonight and being a part of this talk. I'll be just audio, obviously. But I'm glad we're here to talk about our children's emotional health. And we're going to talk about how to parent our children to promote emotional health. And the way to do that, as we'll be talking about tonight, is to promote that word, you've heard it, resiliency, to help our kids have the strength to take on the challenges of life around them and the world around them. And anxiety is a big part of that. We all have to survive moments like Andre and I, and then we just survived with the technology. We're going to talk about COVID tonight. We're also going to talk about children's emotional development a little bit more broadly. Let's start with COVID, and very quickly we're going to think about, to start off, what COVID's been doing to our families and to our children. I know you kind of know because you've been living it, but I want to talk to you a little bit about what's actually happening at a developmental level. We've had it for a year. We're going to have this social distancing, these shutdowns in society, a real interruption of our kids' developmental lives for at least another 3 to 6 months. It'll be a year and a half all told. So it's a juggernaut. I mean, last week I was talking with a principal before doing a talk at a school like yours, and she was telling me about, she just had a big fight with her teenage son, grade 12, a 17-year-old boy who had said to her right before I was going to give the talk, this was a stressful experience last week, he had called his mom or texted her and said, I'm going to a chill at Johnny's house, a chill meaning a party. And, you know, he's in grade 12. Normally this would be fine, but they've got immunocompromised people at home. Anyway, he can't go to the party because of COVID, because of the exposure risk. And so mom had to say, no, you can't go to Johnny's chill. And her son just completely lost it with her. She said he got angry at me in a way I haven't seen in years. And what's happening is COVID is forcing us adults to interfere in our children's private lives, in their independent lives, their lives out in the big bad world in a way that's infuriating to them. It also tends to cause them to regress and to get into more childish positions. There's a way to think about this. Normally, in normal times, and here's what COVID has turned on its head. In normal times, we get up in the morning, we worry about our kids, we do, and we get the breakfast into them, we get them in their clothes and their gym gear and their trumpet and blah, blah, blah. We get them off to school, probably drive them to school these days. But then they're at school and they're out of our hair, thank God, for most of the day or a good chunk of the day. which is so essential, not just for our mental health as parents, but it's essential for their mental health. When they go out into the world, they're getting an apprenticeship in reality. When they're off at school, they're not just learning reading, writing, and arithmetic. They're taking on, the role of a citizen, right? They're learning how to deal with authority, the school, how to get along with their peers and colleagues, their students. They're learning how to handle their responsibilities. They're learning how to structure their day 9 to 3 or 5. So it really is a training in social reality, and it has to happen out in reality. And reality has to have its own rules and laws and consequences. And COVID has just blown that apart. So, I mean, I gave you the teenage version. I've got my kids in their 20s. I was going to start tonight with an example from my own life with my 20-year-old. I'm going to skip it because you guys got to witness me having a panic attack. But here's the younger version. Is, let's say you're a parent of a 10 or 11-year-old, and he's in grade 5 or 6, and you've been homeschooling. He's been at home, and he's supposed to be at school in the dining room or the library or the study or the TV room or his bedroom or wherever you've made school. And he's been online, and when you've stuck your head in, he's been playing Fortnite or Minecraft or anyway, not attending to his lesson. And all of a sudden, you feel responsible, of course you do, to direct him back to his studies. Suddenly, you're managing his school day. This kind of control is crazy making for everybody. It's not good for the kids. It's not good for the parents. So I'm going to sort of list for you the 3 main areas that COVID has laid waste to normal child development and normal parent-child relations. The first one is just that, control. COVID has set us parents up, and you guys, you parents, it's set you up to be your kids' managers from dawn till dusk. And to manage them in the mornings and then all through their school day. You have to worry about their screens, and then you have to worry about their COVID exposure. And that is, as I said earlier, it's crazy making for everybody. Your kids are going to resent it eventually. And of course, you're going to burn out because it's not the way it's supposed to be. That's one area. 2, privacy. Don't underestimate how big an issue this one is. We don't have, unless we're, have the wealth to afford a lot of space, and most of us don't, we're spending a heck of a lot of time together. And we're all cooped up together. There's not the kind of space we typically need to make the good family, to lead to good family functioning. For example, one of the things we need to do as parents is be able to speak privately about our children when they can't hear. Let's call that a caucus meeting. Guys, mom and dad, parents out there, you guys, good family structure. You guys are the government. You can be a very benevolent, kind, loving government, but you're the government. You're in control. And governments meet behind closed doors. They work out government policy when the citizens aren't listening. This is good for family functioning. To be able to work out your differences, to come to a consensus, and parent with one voice. That really does build family structure. Conversely, when mom and dad aren't on the same page, when the frustrations, especially the frustrations of COVID parenting, become too much, and you start to argue with each other or get upset with each other around your parenting, and the children witness it, now we lose family structure. We lose containment and control, and we all feel worse. That ability as parents to get away and caucus, it's been taken away from a lot of us, or it's harder to find. As a therapist and a family therapist, the meetings, where I've met with parents as they try to get away for a private hour, lots of car conversations, backyards. I met one couple, one mom and dad in the tree fort. They were packed up in the tree fort, and we did their session out there just to get away and get some privacy. Kids don't have the privacy they need, and they do need privacy. And they need to have the door closed at times. And they're all on top of each other as well. Kids are probably fighting more than they used to. There's a lot more sibling conflict. And when there's sibling conflict, parents, you're less insulated from it. Again, because of the lack of privacy. So you're more likely to unhelpfully intervene and try to control their relationship and fights. So the privacy is a big issue. That's 2. 3, and I want to stress this one. This is a big one. It's called regression. It's a technical term, and it's about emotional development. As your kids will grow up, and as they grow up, they'll become more able to self-regulate, They'll also become more respectful of you as an actual human being. They'll stop taking you for granted as a parenting machine to whose services they're entitled. Okay, that's part of growing up. And we all grow up, but we can all regress at times. Under certain conditions, we can lose our developmental level and return to earlier ways of functioning. You know, that high school principal who told me that story about her son in grade 12, and he, you know, he suddenly acted like he hadn't in years. You know, Mom, you're so stupid. You always do this. You're such a jerk. Like, and actually looking like a bit more like a 13-year-old. I can tell you, my own children in their 20s, you know, getting in conflicts with them, especially over COVID, I've seen my son be rageful at me in ways that I haven't seen since he was a teenager. If you've got kids who are 11 or 12, they're likely to be regressing to younger stages. It's very easy for kids to regress around their parents. It's a law of life that when we go out into the world as children, we're at our best. That's where our conduct is the best. So that's where they'll make you proud. Seriously, when your kids are over at their friend's house and their friends' parents are around, you know, they're acting a lot like you at that point. They're accessing all that you've taught them and their values, and they're making a good impression. That's why you'll often hear from your friends, you know, the parents of your kids' friends. They'll say, "Oh, you know, Johnny was over. What a lovely young man. So polite, so respectful." You're thinking, "Really, our Johnny?" But yeah, that's your Johnny. But then he comes home. When our kids come home, they easily regress. They return to younger ways of fun. They turn their super egos off. They let you manage them, and they easily get more childish. And COVID is a huge setup for this thing called regression. What we're going to do now, that's a way to think about the dilemmas, the strains, the stresses, the impact that COVID has had on your family lives. It gives you a kind of theoretical background. What I want to do now is actually leave COVID for a bit. We're going to talk now a little bit about children's emotional health and how to promote it. Take about half an hour to do that. And then we're going to double back and then really revisit some of the do's and don'ts for handling your kids over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months, whatever we've got left of this awful thing that we're all going through. Those comments I've been making about your shared life at home and your kids' life out in the big world, that's what COVID has blown apart. They're so key. These are two different emotional landscapes for children. Your shared life at home, that's the first world. That's where your kids start. They start in your family. I'm talking age 0, age 1, age 2, age 3, 4, 5 years old, into kindergarten, maybe even to grade 1, age 6, 0 to 6. It's a very special and distinct stage of childhood, especially when it comes to the role you play, mom and dad. And these are very formative years. Earlier equals deeper in psychology. You're really shaping your children, 0 to 4, 0 to 5, 0 to 6. It's a great stage of life. You keep them safe. They get to explore the world. They call it the child's love affair with the world, age 3, age 4. Right? The world is their oyster. They don't need to be particularly worried about things at that age. You do most of the worrying for them. It frees them up to explore and have fun. You go to the park and there's a dog. Your little boy's like, "Woohoo, a doggy!" You see that it's a pit bull, you pull him back. Okay? That's a very typical first world scene. He doesn't have to worry about those things. You do the worrying for him. He gets to explore and have an awesome time. It's not always sunshine and light in the first world, okay? Sometimes kids do the wrong thing, but it has a very special meaning in that first world. Let's say I'm 4 years old and now we're back from the park. We had a great time and that doggy looked fun. You didn't let me go near him, but we had lots of other fun things happen. Now we're home. It's almost dinner. I know I'm not allowed to eat before dinner, and I sneak into the kitchen and you catch me stealing a cookie from the cookie jar. And you say to me, "That's not okay." And I feel like a bad boy. It's a powerful moment. It's a powerful learning moment. You're teaching me right from wrong, good and bad. And in fact, those are the words. I feel like a bad boy. The emotions of this moment and the emotions of the first world are guilt and shame. Mom and dad, you're very powerful figures. You're like, in a way, you're like gods, really, to your very young children. You have that kind of awe-inspiring ability, and you can really make me feel terrible about myself. I feel like a very bad boy, like I'm not doing a good thing. You're teaching me values. So you can see what an important stage of life this is, 0 to 4 or 5. You're teaching me about work ethic, for example. So we get into kindergarten and in grade 1, and I'm going to get a report card. You're really concerned to make sure that that's a good report, that it shows that I'm working hard, especially those letters at the end of the report card. Don't worry about the numbers so much, but making sure that I'm participating and I'm cooperating and I'm playing well with others and all those kinds of things that are important to you. And if I'm not doing well in those areas, my biggest concern is probably that mommy and daddy are going to be disappointed in me. I'll feel guilt and shame, the emotions of the first world, and that's fine because I'm only in kindergarten. But if I get all the way to high school or to first year university, and my biggest concern about my report card is that mommy and daddy will be disappointed in me, then I've got problems. That's not going to work. By the time I get to first year university, in fact, or sooner than that, by the time I get to high school, I'm going to need to be worried on my own behalf. I need to have left the world of guilt and shame and joined the big world out there. It's a different emotional economy. If I don't get things done out there, if I don't study for my tests and fail, then bad things will happen. Uh-oh, now we're in the world of anxiety. Anxiety is in the fear family of emotions. Anxiety stands between an organism and the outside world. Guilt and shame stands between a human being and his or her gods, actually. That's where guilt and shame belongs. They're really important emotions, guilt and shame. But they're not helpful to us by the time we get to high school, actually. If I'm feeling really badly about my performance in school, and I know you guys are really upset with me, I feel bad about myself. I feel depleted. It's not a motivating emotion. Anxiety, on the other hand, can be an extremely motivating emotion. Anxiety can be all kinds of things. It's a slippery fish. It can really get in our way and get in the way of our motivations, but it can also be a motivator. Anxiety is a really important emotion to understand. So that's why I said it's not a bad thing that you got to see that panicky moment. I think you kind of witnessed us trying to figure out how to get this talk going. You know, anxiety is with us every day. So let's stop for a moment now and talk a little bit about anxiety, what it is. It's a word we're all using. I had a 6-year-old in my office the other day, and we get to know each other, and I turned to him and I say, so what's going on? What brings you in? And he says, I've got anxiety. He couldn't even say the word. What did he think it meant? So let's talk about this for a moment. Anxiety is an emotion, obviously. It's in the fear family of emotions. Everybody kind of gets that. But we can make some distinctions here. It's different from fear as well. Fear is a basic animal response to threat and danger. All animals have it. If they don't have a fear system going, they die. You're a zebra and you think lions are kind of cute, that's it, you're done. Gone. You need to be fearful of lions. In fact, not only do zebras survive by being fearful of lions, they're fearful of anything that looks remotely like a lion, like perhaps, I don't know, a low-lying sand dune of that general color. So the fear system overgeneralizes threat. It needs to be effective. It makes false positives, if you like. It's good at detecting threat even when threat's not there, because to do false negatives and to assume everything's fine when it's not, again, that's not a good fear system. Fear has a negative cognitive bias as well. It feels like kind of everything's bad. Once the fear system is alerted, it's really suspicious of just about everything. Fear has an override switch. When animals have a fear response, they get startled. It takes over the brain. If someone charges out of a big dark alley with a big stick at you, you'll have a fear response. You'll run or fight, but you won't be doing anything else. You won't be wondering what you're going to make for dinner. It takes over the whole mind. Fear is an in-the-moment response to danger. All animals have it. If they're under threat, they'll have the fight-flight reflex. That's fear, in the moment.
Anxiety is the same as fear, except it's always in the future. It's anticipatory. Anxiety is the anticipation of something that would be fearful if it were to happen. So our definition for anxiety is fear, which is way back in the base of our brain. We share that with the animal kingdom. Fear plus planning. The prefrontal cortex, the human parts of the mind and brain. Okay? It's the planning centers, the ability to look ahead and say, uh-oh, winter's coming, and do things about it before it comes. COVID is a huge example of this. In fact, the whole planet has engaged in healthy anxiety, if you like. We've all been able to say, uh-oh, this would be really bad if it overtook our hospital systems. We better subject ourselves to terrible discomfort and inconvenience, take our kids' schools away from them for a whole year, wear masks wherever we go, on and on and on, because we know that if we don't, it would be even worse. Anxiety is a hugely adaptive human emotion. It's actually what sets us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom. We're the only species with this amazing capacity to anticipate danger before it comes and to do something about it. Talk about a sales pitch for anxiety I'm giving you tonight, and that's just what it is. It's a sales pitch. We have a lot of kids who struggle with anxiety these days. Lots of maladaptive anxiety. Anxiety disorders are examples of maladaptive anxiety, anxiety that's not functional, that doesn't serve us well. In fact, it interferes with our healthy functioning. That's what we mean by maladaptive anxiety. We have so much maladaptive anxiety, it's not an exaggeration to say that we're in the midst of an anxiety epidemic, especially in childhood. I know I just freaked you out. I just made you anxious about childhood anxiety. That's actually one of the features of anxiety that makes it such a slippery fish. Anxiety easily feeds on itself. We easily get anxious about anxiety. It's one of the things that makes it so difficult to rein in and get moving in the right direction. But that's exactly what we need to do in life. We need to have anxiety at our fingertips. We need to have it on board. When my son turned 16, if you haven't got here yet, guys, it's coming. The day he turned 16, he went and took his G1. He got his license that allows him to drive around with a parent in the car, which is what we did for hours on end. Suddenly my son had the best work ethic ever. And the day he could take his driving test, his on-road test, this is the one to get his G2. Guys, if you haven't been here, this is what's coming at you. When he gets his G2, he can drive a car without you in it. So off he goes, he does his G2, and bad news, he passes. He gets it. And so now he's licensed to kill. Now he's licensed to drive. And the moment is coming where if it hasn't come yet, your child will look at you and say, Mom, Dad, can I have the keys? And you will want to say, no, we sold the car. We're a biking family now. But you won't. You'll hand the keys over, and off they go. Sam, which is what happened. And, I'll tell you with Sam, about a month and a half into his driving career, it was a Sunday, he went off, he asked to borrow the car. Yep, he had an errand he had to run on the other side of the city. We're in Toronto. And off he goes, and he comes back much too soon. He can't have done the errand. And he's looking kind of weird. And I say, Sam, what's going on? What's happened? Well, he got a ticket. He rolled through a stop sign. And a cop stopped him and gave him a ticket. And at first he was all bravado. I wasn't rolling that fast, stupid cop. But a $120 ticket and a couple of demerit points sure got his attention. Driving around with Sam after that was so painful. He put the parking brake on at every stop sign. Like cops were jumping out of bushes everywhere, right? He was feeling anxious. He was anticipating, and I was happy about it, right? I'm happy that he's taking on this anxiety. This is adaptive anxiety. He's driving a car. He needs to be aware that there's a lot of risks. So your goal as parents is not to help your kids avoid anxiety, far from it. Your goal is to help your child slowly take on anxiety for himself a little bit at a time. Because anxiety is that critical emotion that stands between an organism and the outside world. We have to be wary. We want our kids to leave our home at 18, not just wary. We want them playful as well. We want them hungry to interact with the world and get things out of it. We want them to be hungry for flow. I'll define that for you guys in a moment. That's the playful part. But we also want them wary. We want them aware of the dangers. And to do that, they have to slowly get that apprenticeship in reality. And you've been giving it to them. I'll tell you, if you think about your child out in the big bad world, that's where you have to protect them early, for sure, because the big bad world can offer some devastating blows. And you have to protect them from those devastating, catastrophic blows. So your little girl, she's 18 months old. She's just learning to get around on her feet. She's pretty wobbly. Every now and then she wants to run because she's just 18 months and she don't know. And you are going to stay close and manage that running. You're all around her because she's so wobbly. She could wipe out. She could really bang her head. You could have a concussion. You're down at sick kids. She basically needs training wheels for walking. And so you're providing them because she's so wobbly and so new to the game. Okay? She's 18 months. So you are protecting and directing. But about 3 years later, 4 years later, she's now 4.5, you're at the park, you know the park well. Now she wants to run around like a crazy person. And what do? You sit in your park bench and you let her. I hope you should. Why? Not because she might be perfect, but because she might wipe out. And if she does wipe out, it will be a painful failure, but not a catastrophic one. It'll be a non-catastrophic, painful failure. The basic building blocks of anxiety, adaptive anxiety, a little bit at a time. Let's picture that moment. You're at the park. She's 4.5. She's running around like a crazy person. She trips over that crack. You're close enough to see she's fine, but you're also close enough to see she's looking for you. It was a good hard wump. She's gone down. She's looking for you, ready to go. Oh, gravity! Ah. Okay, ready to really, really lose it. Now, how do we respond in that moment as parents? There's an ideal response, and lots of parents get it right at this moment of time because the stakes are low. It's just a scraped knee, as they say. Okay? And she's ready to freak. Now, there is an ideal parenting response, and it has two parts to it. It's interesting how often parents get both sides right. One part of it is we respond in an empathetic way. We use our minds. We see what's going on with her, and we communicate eye to eye that we get exactly how that feels. It's actually, they have a name for it. It's called mirroring. Likely what you do, or you did, if this is in your past, your kids are older now, is you made eye contact, and you actually, with your body and your voice, you actually reflected back what she's feeling. Ouch. You said, oh, ow, did you hit a crack? Ouch. We actually show in our face, our body, and our language that that's an ouch. We give it a name. We understand her experience and we help her understand it in that moment. That's part of what we do. The other part, by the way, they call it a mirroring response, but it's not a perfect mirror, is it? Because if we mirrored her exactly, we would go, ah, and really lose it. But we don't. It's as if we show her what she's feeling, but in a muted version, as if to say, ouch, but you're okay. It's a fantastically helpful response for children because your daughter feels heard and comforted by you, but also feels like this is manageable. You help her feel like it is manageable. This is an understood moment together. It's what we call minding when we respond to our kids in this really important way. Notice, by the way, the things you don't do in this important learning moment. Okay, you don't actually get her to jump up and practice running left, right, like you don't finger wag. You don't get mad at her for tripping over the crack. You treat it as a normal, healthy part of growing up, and she takes that right out of your mind. That's the optimal way to respond to our kids as they go through life and make bad decisions at times, like not watch where they're going and trip over cracks, and learn that there's gravity in effect. In that moment, for your 4-year-old, when she trips over that crack, she developed a little bit of anxiety about cracks and gravity and getting hurt. That's good. You wouldn't want your children to leave the playgrounds of life without ever having had a skin knee, and learn that those are things to be wary of. Let's move forward. Let's think about, when should you stop managing and directing? If that's running around, when should you stop managing and directing your children's homework responsibilities? And let's get COVID out of the room, okay? There's no COVID. at all. What? Isn't that nice? What a lovely moment. Okay, there's no COVID at all in the world, just for a moment here. In normal time, when do you resign from the role of homework police? When are children ready to take on the burden of responsibility, of being responsible for their own school responsibilities? When to think of anxiety? Are your children ready to be anxious on their own behalf? No longer to be in the first world about their school responsibilities, but to be now more in the second world. This is between me and school and my responsibilities and my goals and objectives in life, actually. The answer may shock you. It's between age 9 and 11, between grade 4 and grade 6. And this is not some theoretical abstract recommendation. This is literally when I and every educator in the world would like you to resign from the role of school police. And if you don't believe me, check in with Mrs. Butler or Andre. Sorry, I don't know Andre. I've forgotten your last name. I know you as your first name. Sure, your family's not using your last name. But check with your principals. Ask them. But yes, it doesn't mean you're out of the picture. We want you involved in your children's lives. But what we're talking about is managing and directing, overseeing, being responsible for. This is what has to change, is being responsible for our kids. It's really tough to let go of. It doesn't mean you're not interested in his school and his school experience. It means that he has to now feel like it's on him. So, but let's walk through that. Let's say that makes sense to you, and let's say you have an 11-year-old boy in grade 6, and you and your co-parents say to him, okay, it's on you. You know what? We know you got this. You hate it when we nag you about homework, and fair enough. Like, you're old enough to manage this on your own, and sorry we were harassing you. We're right here if you need help. And over to you. Okay. And then you not only say it, but you do it. And what that means is when he comes home, remember there's no COVID right now in this idea. When he comes home from school, you don't ask him if he's got any homework. You want to be shockingly absent on the homework question. You do. You want him to feel all alone with this problem. That way he'll start to feel the worry, the anxiety. He's ready. He is ready, believe it or not. He's not missing those parts of his brain that allow him to be anxious on his own behalf. They're right there, ready to kick in. His amygdala and his prefrontal cortex, ready to go. You may have to prove it, though, and he may have to prove to himself that it needs to be that way. So you resign from the role of homework police, there's a chance that he's going to start to make some really bad decisions and play Fortnite and not study at all for his spelling quiz on Fridays, weekly. Under your tutelage, he was getting 19 out of 20s regularly. Now, first week after you resign from the role of homework police, 3 out of 20 you get. And of course, you know about it because parents always know. But that's what he gets. He gets 3 out of 20. And the next week, he gets 2 out of 20. And let's say you and your co-parent are aware of this. So it's easy to conclude it's not working. My boy is missing his amygdala, is what you will conclude in this moment. It's tempting. It's not true. Sometimes it has to get a bit worse before it gets better. By the way, 50% of the time it doesn't. Lots of kids take to it actually quite quickly. If they're ready, around 10, 11 years old, they're ready to do this. If not, and you're getting anxious because you can see the spelling is going downhill and you're worried about the fact that he's maybe not doing his math, so on, call the teacher. Make a connection with the teacher. When you call that teacher, I want you to follow 3 rules because, by the way, there's a default bad conversation that can happen at this moment between the parent and the teacher. I'm going to go quickly through this, but you need to think this through. These days, when Johnny fails 3 spelling tests in a row, parents and teachers get on the phone together, but it can go south in a hurry. When the teacher calls the parent to say, "Did you know, John?" That can happen. You might get called by the teacher. Did you know that Johnny failed 3 spelling tests in a row? You're going to feel like the teacher's telling you to work harder on Johnny's spelling problems. And you might feel blamed and judged into the bargain. Sometimes if you, the parent, calls the teacher's going to feel like you're asking them to work harder on Johnny's spelling problem and feel blamed and judged. And you'll get into a hot potato game with the worry ball. Who's the one person not anxious in this scenario? Johnny. So the job now is between the parent and the teacher to transfer the requisite anxiety to the child. And you can do it. You really can. You really can. Now, you got to follow 3 steps to make this happen. If you're calling the teacher, first thing out of your mouth has to be a message of appreciation and trust. Build an alliance of village elders in this moment. Mrs. Smith, we're so grateful that you're Johnny's teacher this year. Thank you so much. His dad and I really appreciate all your efforts. A very clear message of support and trust. It's a great way to get that alliance off to a good start. She's not going to feel, the teacher, that you've called her to attack, blame, or light a fire under her. Okay? 2, then you can move on and share with the teacher that you've stepped back from the role of homework police. Give her some information. The more we managed Johnny, the less he was doing. We realized he's able to take this on. Teachers get it. Just talk a little bit about Johnny, where he's at in his growth and development, what you've done, and you've turned these responsibilities over to him. Okay? And now and only now can you go on to step 3, which is to license the teacher to be gravity. That's the key. The message has to come from the external world. You guys can't do it. You bring the guilt and shame. You're figures of the first world. That's the key here. So at step 3, you're actually empowering the teacher. You want the teacher to get off the call thinking, okay, wow, Johnny's mom and dad really see me. They really trust me. They really see me as playing a critical role in Johnny's life. They got my back. Now that teacher can come down on Johnny. The bell goes for recess. Johnny, where are you going? I'm going out to play. No. You're sitting right down. We're doing spelling. What? You've got 3 on your spelling test this week. It's not good enough. You're not even going to get past, she can lower the boom. She'll start to get him anxious about his marks, about passing the course, about what's coming up in the future. We need external authority to be authoritative in our kids' lives. There's no getting around it. The teachers, the coaches, the people out there in the world, the policemen for your 16-year-old drivers, they're external authorities. They bring the anxiety. Mom and dad, you're figures of the first world. You bring the guilt and shame. It's an inconvenient truth of parenting. We need external authority to be authoritative. So you have to license those people out in the world to be authoritative, especially in schools these days, because too many teachers don't feel like they have that license. They're worried that parents are going to be mad at them, and they'll call. They're worried about Johnny's failing the test. They'll call, and you'll get into that hot potato game, parents and teacher. I want to share with you now a really important thought experiment, because all of what I'm talking about is hard for us modern parents to do. And I want to talk about why. It's really, really difficult for us to let go of these things a little bit along the way, and to give our kids permission to make mistakes and learn from them, even though that's really what we have to do to raise emotionally healthy children. A little bit at a time, we've got to turn responsibility over to them, to make mistakes, to screw up, and to learn from them. But we have a very hard time doing that. And I want to help you understand why that is. Let's imagine another learning moment, okay? Let's imagine that our 4.5-year-old in the park, she tripped over a crack, and you gave her that ideal response. She felt better, and she's gone off to play in the sandbox. And you brought no sand toys for her. Bad parent. There's a better parent in the park than you this morning, and she supplied her daughter, or her son, let's say, with all the latest and greatest sand play equipment. And he's in there rocking it, having a great time. And your daughter wants to share it and play with it, and this little boy says no. And your little girl, let's imagine, she wants it so badly, she tries to take it by force, and there's a tussle in the sandbox. And in the tussle, your daughter bonks the little boy on the head with the sifter, and he starts to cry. Okay, I want you to imagine there's a real scene in the sandbox, and your daughter's in the middle of it, and she's the aggressor. All right, now imagine that you're over on your park bench. This happens. Before you can react, another adult in the park that day, probably another parent who's closer to the scene, steps in and talks to your daughter, sternly. Hey, you can't do that. You can't just take his toys. Look, you made him cry. That's not all right. Now you give those back. It's not okay. Right? Talks real stern. Your daughter's like, oh. All right. Now, what do you think you'd do? It's a useful thing to think about for a moment. When I ask you, how do you think you'd react to that moment? I mean it. Actually, how would you react? Because this is a hot moment, and it's easy to react in hot moments, to react emotionally. Really, the most important question here is, what are you feeling? What are the emotions? Here's the golden rule of parenting, guys, and it really is. If you can identify what you're feeling, especially in a moment like this, if you can identify the emotion, then you have a fighting chance of not acting out on it. Right? If you can really know what's happening inside and understand what's going on emotionally, give it a name if you like, then you can, if you can give it a name, then you can tame. Name it, you can tame it. You may not, then you won't necessarily act out on the feeling. But if you don't think about it, if you don't reflect, if you don't give what you're feeling a name, you'll act out on it for sure. So what are the emotions here? If we were live, if I was in London with you folks tonight in 3 dimensions, I'd ask you to put up your hands. I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you what I think you're feeling. Sorry, it's rude, but it'll move us forward. I've given this thought experiment so many times, I can tell you there's 2 very, very common emotional responses. One, embarrassment. As one mom said, I feel humiliated. She just brought shame to the whole family, okay? It's a really embarrassing moment. The other very strong feeling, and I've had lots of parents feel both, is anger. Anger at the other parent. Thank you very much. I'm the parent here. Thank you very much. I'll do the parenting. Maybe push them over on your way to the sandbox, because that's where you're going. Whether it's the shame and the embarrassment, or whether it's the anger at the other parent, or whether it's both, you're likely to get up out of that fence and off of that bench and get into that sandbox. Tell your child, come on, you can't do that. But what's best for your child? And here there's a definite right and wrong. Assuming there was a real misdemeanor, and here there was both theft and assault. Assuming that the other adult was appropriate, and I know I was strong, but there was no F-bomb. So assuming there was a real misdemeanor and the other adult was appropriate, there's no doubt that what's best for you is to stay in that park bench. And if you can, thank that parent later. Why? Because that was external, the external world. He was an external authority. When he stepped in the first instance, your child learned, wow, when I do bad stuff happens. Uh-oh. It got her anxiety. It taught her something about what to do and not do out in the big bad world. But when you got in her face moments later, she learned, when I do bad stuff, mom freaks out, dad freaks out. And rather than learn how to manage herself in the big world, she learns how to manage you. And you become the custodian of her world, doing the worrying for her. This is the trap of the modern parent. We feel so on the hook for our kids' behavior that when they screw up in the world, it feels like we've screwed up. We have a really hard time giving our kids the space he or she needs to make a mistake, make a blunder, and trust that they will learn from it without intervening. That's why with our grade 6 boy, who's now learning to be responsible for his own schoolwork, he's tripping over a crack. But it's hard to have that same response you had when you tripped over a crack at age 4. Oh, you failed that spelling test again. Oh, I'm sorry, bud. That's a drag. And you give that empathy. Now, when that's happening, kids have 2 ways of responding. If you have one of these kids who needs to make bad decisions before he makes good decisions, and he's gonna test you. If he's that boy or girl, and he's been playing Minecraft instead, and you've called the teacher, and the teacher's beginning to lower the boom, and you are giving the empathetic response, kids can still continue. There's 2 things that kids will start to do at that moment. I want to warn you. One of them is to pretend not to care, to feign nonchalance. So you say, I'm really sorry, that sucks. They say, I don't care, school's stupid. I don't care. It's a ruse. And I want to alert you to it now. We call it, I don't care, said Pierre. And it's an attempt to pretend that he is missing his amygdala. Because if he can convince you that he has no anxiety, it'll take you both back to where you were before, which he's realizing now unconsciously he preferred. As much as he hated you nagging him, he preferred it because you were also on the case and helping him with all of this. Now he's all alone with it. Okay, so that's the one attempt. The other thing kids will attempt, and some kids do both, is to have a little collapse. To say, well, I suck at spelling. I'm gonna be an idiot. I'm gonna be a homeless person and die. Well, I hate myself. Okay, when that happens, there's some real hurt there. He's letting you know that he's feeling the pain. But what I want you to do in that moment is listen to the music, not the words. He's not literally quitting. He's just letting you know that he's having a little bit of a temper tantrum. It's okay. Be empathetic. I know. This is really hard. Your dad and I have stepped way back, and it was really hard for you, and you're learning. We all learn. You can be empathetic about the learning process. But don't change a thing. It's just grade 5. It's just grade 6. This is a great time for your child to start to learn to take on this particular burden of responsibility. I'm looking at the time. I want to jump back to COVID now. I've been talking to you about some really general and important things to be tracking and thinking about in terms of promoting your child's emotional health and their ability to take on adaptive anxiety a little bit at a time. Let's go back to COVID now. I talked about the 3 areas that COVID is really wreaking havoc on our families. Control, we're set up to control them from dawn till dusk, crazy making for everybody. Privacy, we're all living on top of each other. We can't get the space we need. Emotional regression, our kids, whatever their developmental stage, are tempted or pulled back into earlier ways of functioning, and including from outside in the big world functioning, where they take on things like a bit more like an adult, to first world functioning, where they act more like childish brats, angry and treating us not like human beings, but like parenting machines. That's what I mean by emotional regression. What to do about it? Okay, let's think about the school day. There's likely to be still some more at-home schooling, and I'm going to go forward on the idea that there's still going to be a bit more of that, those moments where your kids are going to be at home and they're meant to be at school online. Okay, here's what I'm going to suggest you do to deal with the fact that you're set up to be controlling your kids all day long in ways that are unhealthy for everybody. You and your co-parent do for sure manage and control a structure, an overall structure to the day, especially Monday to Friday. Okay, for sure there should be breakfast, and school is 9 to 12, whatever it is, lunch 12 to 1, whatever these time frames are, 1 to 3 back in school. I really encourage families to have off-screen time if you can do it together. We don't have time to do a deep dive necessarily on that, but if that's in your schedule, great. That's in the schedule. Screen time. Lots of kids still need to be managed on screens and the amount of time they spend on screens. Meal time. Really good to have parents sit down with kids for meals. Yeah, and that's management and control and direct. That's a really worth making sure the kids follow the structure of the day. But when they're doing things that are outside in the big world things, like even though he's in the dining room, he's at school, maybe he's our grade 5, grade 6 student, whether or not he's on program, that's the teacher's problem, not mine, Mom, not mine, Dad, okay? That's where you leave it with your boy, leave it with your girl. If they're not getting the program, that's something that has to be between your child and the big world outside, the outside world. And if it's not on track, call that teacher. Follow our 3 steps. Start with those messages of appreciation. Let them know where you've stepped back. Empower them to be not only good cop, but if they need to be bad cop too. To engage your child, to break out in a breakout room. And they have lovely ways to connect, but also to lower the boom if necessary, especially if it's an older child. Now, if he's only in grade 1 or grade 2, we don't need a lot of stick. We don't need a lot of anxiety yet. We do use a lot more carrot and engagement with the younger kids. But once they get into grade 3, but for sure grade 4, for sure grade 5, 6, and above, we really want those parents to be able to step back and leave it with the teachers to lower the boom. Okay, so you manage the structure of the day, but let your child be his own manager when it comes to his school responsibilities. It's a way to get out of the trap of managing them all day long. Privacy, fight for privacy, really do. Okay, guys, Mom and Dad, you do need to caucus. Find ways to get away from the kids. Don't let them bash down your door. And if your door's not soundproof, go out on the front porch. The weather's warming up, thank God. The tree forts are available again. Fight for those moments, okay, to get away and talk about the kids. It's got differences of opinion. It's a great place to work them out. This is a really, really challenging thing to parent together. It's unlikely you're going to be naturally on the same page all the time. Discuss government policy when the citizens can't hear. Respect your children's need for privacy. The kids have the door closed sometimes. Okay, well, they need to have the door closed sometimes. It means you need to knock. And when you knock, wait for a response and an enter before you open the door, right? Otherwise, the knocking serves no purpose. You have to knock and make yourself wait. You really do, okay? I know that sounds obvious, but it's an easy thing to forget. Try not to over-police your kids fighting, okay? Let them work it out as much as you can. I know it's obnoxious. Put in your earplugs. The more you referee them, the more you'll have to referee them. That's a form of regression, by the way. Kids, if the parents are gonna police us, we just stop managing ourselves and we let them manage us. That regression is innate in human beings. If any of you guys out there play rec hockey, or some of you women do too, I don't know if it's like this for women, maybe it's not, but I can tell you, among us men, I'm in my 50s, I play rec hockey. There's two ways to play. Pick up, someone rents the ice, we all go out, some guys blue jersey, some guys white, whatever. We play like a pickup game. It's usually relatively gentlemanly. But the moment you put a referee on the ice, and the referee is responsible for your behavior, you will notice, and every guy who plays hockey will confirm this, an amazing change in behavior. And suddenly the men are pushing, shoving, and telling each other to F off and punching each other in the head. Seriously. Lawyers, doctors, and teachers, we regress. We regress because there's someone, it's unconscious, but there's someone else responsible for our conduct and for the other guy's conduct. There's a surrogate parent on the ice, basically. So beware of over refereeing. The more you referee, the more you'll have to referee. Finally, emotional regression. Listen, when our kids regress, they regress in ways that are familiar. They'll go back. You'll notice, now that I've given you this word, you'll probably notice it. When they regress, they're drawing you backwards with them. The temptation will be to regress right alongside of them and start to parent them. In my case, so my son's 24, Sam, and he was yelling at me the other day, Dad, because I was telling him he had to wear a mask. It's true. And Dad, you're such an idiot. You ruin everything. Says my 24-year-old son, and it reminds me of 15. It really does, and it made me want to snap at him like I did. Like it made me want to go back to parenting him as if he's 15. That's the trap. Don't follow. Notice the regression. Forgive the regression. Forgive him. He knows not what he does. Okay, and keep, in my case, keep talking to my son as if he's 24. Be resolute. The regression is temporary. Talk to your child at their developmental level. Remember what I was saying to you earlier. When they go out into the world, they up their conduct. They turn on what Sigmund Freud calls the superego. That's the part of the mind, it's just a metaphor, but it means that part of the mind that's based on identifications with you, mom and dad, the value center, the thing you built from 0 to 6. Now, if you have kids who are still in the first world, you know, you're still building it, but I'm talking if he's 8, if he's 10, if he's 15, if he's 24. When he goes out into the world, he accesses that superego, the do's and don'ts, the thou shalt and thou shalt nots. He'd make you proud. When he comes back home, you see the most regressed versions of your children. Try to talk to them as if he, you know, if he's a boy, talk to him as if he is that kid who would make you proud out there in the world, even though he's regressing. When they regress, you'll have to hold on to his normal developmental level and keep talking to him as if he's 24 or 15 or 10, his actual developmental age. Well, this has been an odd one, guys. I've been talking at my cell phone. I keep poking it now and again to make sure I haven't run out of juice, make sure I still see somebody's phone number on the screen. I assume you're all there, or some of you are still there and you've been listening. I think, Andre, if you're there, I'm going to see if we can turn it over to you and see if we can manage some questions. So I'm going to pause for a moment and Andre, pass it back to you for a moment.
And you can hear me, Dr. Russell?
I can indeed.
And 90 people, we've had upwards of 102. So yes, We've had that consistently at that level, so a lot of people listening in, Dr. Russell. Thank you.
Great. I'm glad to hear it. I was taking that on faith.
We have a few questions. The first one here, and I like it. Thank you, moms and dads out there. It's just like on Facebook. We have little like thumbs going up, so other people are liking other parents' questions, Dr. Russell. So we have the first. One of the biggest challenges during COVID is my children watching the neighbors and friends break the social distancing rules month after month. Any advice on what to tell my children?
What a great question, man. Everyone is feeling that. Whoever wrote that, we all feel your pain. Oh my God, that's a brutal one. So, I mean, you know, we want more details, but we can fill in some of the details. So there you are, you know, I guess putting on for sure some restrictions. You can't go out and do this, that, or the other thing. You're looking out the window and you see the neighbors getting to do those things. It's just not fair. And that not fair is easily turned into a protest. And suddenly you guys are ruining everything, as my son said to me, or you're being questioned. And so let me look at those two different themes that can arise at that moment. I'll take the second one first. One response, if it's not a protest, some kids are confused by this and they're asking you to help them understand. Wait a minute, but if what you're saying is true, how come the Smiths are doing that? And you're having to give an accounting of the fact that there is indeed a lot of different ideas and approaches out there. And there's a lot of strong feelings about it. There's a lot of moral feelings about it. So here's a thought I have to share. It's a COVID-specific thought. You may have already thought this. It's not rocket science, but here's some language that's useful. Everybody is now having to make their own risk-reward analysis. Everybody's different, and it really is a risk-reward analysis. If I'm a young person with very good immune systems, and I live in a family where with not many people, and everybody's got good immune systems, no one's really at risk, and I really live my world out in the world. I really get a lot out of being out there, active, socializing. Now going out, and now my reward is huge to go out, and my risks are low. Or I'm 82 and I have low immune, or I'm 12 but I live with an 82-year-old whose immune system is very compromised. And I'm furthermore, actually, I like being a bit of a homebody. I don't need to be out there in the world so much. Now my rewards are lower and my risks are higher. Just a way to, I mean, this isn't rocket science, guys, but you can see everybody has their own risk-reward analysis to make. It's based on their own needs and the needs of their bubble mates. This is what everybody's having to do, and everybody has to accept everybody else's risk-reward conclusions. That's a way to help kids understand this. And that takes some of the moral fury out of it. The moral fury doesn't help. This is just a time for us all to be adaptively anxious, to have that low-level, steady-state anxiety that leads us to keep a 6-foot distance out on the streets. This is healthy anxiety. The other thing that can happen is you're getting protest. They're saying it's not fair. You guys are idiots, mom and dad. You ruin everything. If you're getting protest, the first thing I want you to do is validate, okay? Validation is key. So validation means feeling their pain. It's something you do with your mind before you do it with your mouth. Get it, okay? Before you defend yourself, before you explain yourself, before anything else, before you pay attention to the fact that his language is rude. Because he didn't just say you guys are idiots, he said you're effing idiots. Okay, he's that mad. Before you fix the behavior, the first thing you're going to want to do is validate. Joni, you're right. This is ridiculous and awful. You're watching the Smiths. It's so unfair. No, we totally get why you're hating on us right now, because we're making a decision that is the opposite of what you want and the opposite of what little Billy Smith is getting to do. And it's brutal. It's brutal on you. And we're so sorry to have to do this to you. Okay, and then yes, there's a big but that's going to come, which is, but we are. But you do want to start with that validating. Okay, just make sure you do it every time. It will help. It'll help him swallow that pill. Okay, and also, and don't do the but right away. Listen to him, hear him out. Okay, and then you'll have to talk about what your rule is. Nevertheless, now the older they get, the more flexibility you have to have. So that if they're out, the older they are, the more autonomy they have to have in the big bad world. I'll give you an example. Kids are coming home from university. They're still kind of kids. He's just 20, this boy, but he's used to living on his own. And the restrictions that mom and dad are putting on him are appalling. But he says to mom and dad, I want to call Granny and see if she'll let me go to the cottage. I know it's not winterized, and see if I can live in the cottage for January. It's worth thinking about letting your young guy explore that. You see what I'm saying? Like, the more they can come up with solutions. If he's in high school and he says, yeah, but I'm going to go to Jimmy's, and Jimmy's got an outdoor heater, and we're going to have masks, and we're going to have 4 feet apart. You at least want to think about negotiating a bit, okay? And finding the older they are, the more you're going to have to let them problem solve a little bit out there in the world. Let me leave it at, we could talk for half an hour on this. I'm going to stop there because I've addressed some of the bigger, I probably raised more questions than given answers, but Andre, let me go back for the next question. I think that's probably good for that particular one.
Sure, and I think this also answers, Doctor, this next question. I'll just share it for everyone listening. How can you reduce anxiety in a pandemic for teenagers and parents? I think you touched on aspects of that.
Yeah,
So,
but let me thank you. Nice way of launching that question. You're exactly right. That question is an invitation to expand just a little bit more. Yeah, how to respond helpfully to your children who might be quite anxious about the pandemic. So let me talk a little bit about how to help a child who's anxious, who's in the grip of something and really struggling. Okay, and is letting you know they're really scared about something. Maybe in this case that Granny's going to get sick and die. How do you help an anxious person, an anxious child? Well, actually, what's intuitive and what most people intuitively do and do first is actually quite unhelpful. What most of us do intuitively is we try to help with the worry. Here are some examples. We try to reassure, or we try to talk about different facts that maybe help the anxious child see it's not quite so bad. We notice that some of our child's fears are a bit of a distortion, and we try to correct the distortion. Those are some examples. Okay. They're so tempting, especially if we can see that there's distorted fears here. The problem is it's never actually helpful, which is a big problem, isn't it? And why isn't it helpful? Because you're just actually contradicting your child's experience. It's as helpful to say these things as it is to help a depressed person to say, here's all the reasons to be happy. It just doesn't actually help them with where they're at. What does help them with where they're at? Validating. You're right, Andre. We've already talked a bit. We've already touched on it. Let's go back to that validating. Validating, it feels counterintuitive in this moment, perhaps because it feels dangerously like you're agreeing with the freaked out feeling, but you're not. You're just letting your child know that this is a particular kind of ouch. So if she's saying to you, I'm worried, don't open the window because I think maybe it's going to come through the window and make Granny sick and die, and you see the distortions. But what you want to do, and she can't sleep because she's thinking about it and she's tearful, is to be compassionate and say, well, that's a really, really scary way to feel. You give it a name. You're really worried about Granny, and now you're beginning to think about it, and that's not fun. That's called validating. You again, just like when she tripped over a crack, you're helping her make sense of her own experience. You're not actually solving it for her, because there is no solving it. It hurts to be in the grip of anxiety like this, and you're saying that's what that is. That's a worried thought, and you can't get it out of your mind, and it's really unpleasant. And then when you do that, she's likely to expand. And she might say more things about Granny or more things about the open window. And you can be curious and you can get her to talk about what's in her mind. When she does that, you'll actually notice her start to feel a little bit better. It's only once you've done a great deal of validating that you have an opportunity to help a child or any person take stock of their worries and maybe look at the distortions for themselves. Or add a bit of value. It's only after doing a lot of validating that you might be able to say, well, but what we know about actually, it can't really just come through the window like that. I know you're worried about it though, so we can close that window for now. But that little bit of reassuring and that information has to come at the end of a great deal of connecting over what she's feeling. You can't get to talking about the scraped knee until you deal with the ouch of the scraped knee. That's the validating piece. Thanks for piggybacking that question, Andre. That was well done. Thank you. Let's go to the next one.
We have two questions I'm going to piggyback, and I'm going upon the thumbs up. A lot of parents like these two combined. So for the homework, is it okay we remind him or her in case they forget? And then when we resign from the role of homework police, do we also stop being screen time enforcers?
Great questions. Okay, so I mean, up until the moment you resign, of course, yeah, you will need to remind them and maybe more. Our kids come home with homework at a very early age now, like grade 1, grade 2, 7, 8, 9 years old. At these ages, of course, you'll have to help them know when, where, and often what to do for their homework. And you know, maybe in grade 3, grade 4, you're still, you know, playing some roles there, and absolutely. Now, when you resign from the role of homework police, that's when, yeah, you're going to no longer tell him he has to do his homework, and that's when you do not ask him about his homework. You don't want to stay in his head. You want to be shockingly absent on the homework question. So when he comes home from school, you want to say something like, hey, all right, how's it going? What's going on? Enjoy the show. When you resign from these roles, guys, it's not an invitation to do less parenting. It's an invitation to do different parenting. Now you don't have to worry about it. It's his problem. Seriously. Now you can just enjoy the show. And if he's not doing his homework, try not to worry about it. Let it be his problem so you can go back to having more fun with your kids. It really is an invitation to have more fun. Okay? So the answer to the first one, yeah, once you've resigned, no more asking about it. Okay? It's his problem. He'll bring it to you. Screen time. Great. I'm so glad you asked it. Screen time and supervision of schoolwork and homework are two different line items in the spreadsheet. Most parents confuse them, as these questions reveal. Very easy to confuse them. You can play Fortnite when you've done your homework. You can do Minecraft when you've done your homework. We're taking your phone away because you failed your science test. Okay, these are examples of getting them entangled. You keep them absolutely separate. When is the age that kids can be self-monitoring and self-managing homework and school responsibilities? Grade 4, 5, 6. Absolutely. The end of elementary school. By the end of grade 6. When are kids able to manage screen time? Much different question. Some kids are able to manage it around those ages as well, but some kids cannot. Some kids need to be managed into grade 7, grade 8, even into grade 9 or grade 10. It's like heroin for them. Okay? And then there's a pandemic. So you may have to put a cap on screen time, but that's completely separate, has nothing to do with homework. Notice how you'll get them confused. Make a stand against it. Don't confuse them. Okay? They have nothing to do with each other. Cap on screen time is cap on screen time. Knowing when to step back from homework is knowing when to step back on homework. That's just your kids' academic growth. Okay? So I'm so glad you asked that question because that's a really helpful trick, guys. Okay? Keep them separate. Don't tangle them. We got time for maybe one more?
Sure. Can we do two? Because the parents are asking some good questions. So here's a question that even for a principal, I would like to hear what you say, Doctor. How do you recommend dealing with a situation when one child in your family has to self-isolate? Basically, I think what they're asking is, what do we say? What do we talk to our children about that piece?
Sorry, what's the context? One of the kids is what?
How do you recommend dealing with a situation when one child in a family has to self-isolate during COVID?
Right. Well, now I'm not an expert on COVID, but I think when that's happening, it generally means the whole family has to self-isolate, unless that child is offering to live in his or her own bubble. So I know of some young people who are undergraduate students who sometimes go home, but they don't want to interfere with what's going on in their mom and dad and family's bubble, and they kind of self-isolate in the basement for 10 days before exposing themselves to the family to them, kind of thing. So I'm not sure I totally get the question. Because I think it does mean everybody has to self-isolate. And I'm not really answering a psychological question here. I'm actually speaking like a public health policy around COVID.
Okay.
Andre, what are your thoughts? What am I missing
Yeah,
here?
you know what? I think we get the idea. As Dr. Russell has mentioned, you have to have those courageous conversations with your children. I'm a parent as well with a 25 and 27-year-old. And yeah, even at that age, you have to have those courageous conversations. But as Dr. Russell has mentioned, yes, there's pullback because they are adults. I have a very long question, a comment, but it deals with anxiety, Doctor. Can I read it to you?
Yes, please.
Everyone seems to presume there is too much anxiety around COVID. I think we are the oddity. Our teens are all doing online school and loving it, prefer it. We have less anxiety, less drama in our home. It's not been perfect, but we have guided them to advocate for themselves, to solve problems with their teachers in the school. They have new friends from school. They like not having to deal with the nonsense at in-person school. We connect now more as a family, able to sit and have lunch together, checking in with each other. I see the children supporting one another with their studies, music practice, and workouts. We have been doing so many family walks and board games. Our home is calmer and more peaceful pre-COVID. That being said, do we need to create some anxiety for them to create learning experiences?
What a fantastic question to have as what a lovely description. There's lots of I'm going to focus on a few things in all of that. First of all, there's a description of a family for whom who's surviving and working through this quite nicely. One of the silver linings, and there's more than one, but one of them is that we have spent more time together and we've had a chance to see sides of each other that we couldn't see before and spend time that we couldn't spend. And when that hasn't been awful, sometimes it's been great. And what a lovely thing to hear. And I know that's not true for all of your families, but it has for some, and it's great that it does. It's lovely to hear. We can also hear some adaptive anxiety. I think it sounds like these kids in this family have taken on their school responsibilities and worked away at them. And so it hasn't really been an issue. I'm extrapolating from the comments, but it sounds like there's some of that healthy sense of I got to get my work done around the school stuff, and that's worked. So that's fantastic. Do we need to create some anxiety? No, not at all. Two thoughts. When they have to get going back into school and there isn't this oasis of being at home and in the embrace of this very lovely, strong, functioning family, their anxiety's fairly likely to go up, okay? These are going to be more what we think of as the social anxieties. There's going to be perhaps a bit more stress of being out there in the world. They might be a little bit more out of their comfort zone. And so their anxiety is very likely to go up anyway. And that's fine, okay? They're going to have to ride that anxiety curve and get accustomed to those stresses and strains of being back in the classroom and in the fray with their friends, back in, as I say, getting that apprenticeship in social reality. Their anxiety is going to go up and they'll have to cope. And they likely will, okay? what should we be thinking about with these kids and all of our kids when they get back out there in the world? What does it look like to be engaged in a healthy way with healthy anxiety? The answer is a particular psychological state called flow. And I mentioned it at the beginning, and this is a great way to get back to it. There's lots of research on flow. It's been in the social sciences, this concept, for 40, 50 years. Flow is the #1 ingredient of human happiness, this psychological state. All of us are in it sometimes. None of us are in it all the time. We're in a flow state when the thing we're doing, whatever it is something we're getting right into. We're getting lost in it. We're getting into it. We're doing it for its intrinsic value, for its own sake. The doing of it now gives us a sense of mastery, satisfaction, purpose, meaning. Okay? If we're in a deep flow state, we get to the end of what we're doing, and we suddenly realize that we're hungry, or the sun went down. We didn't even notice. Okay? That's a flow state. Now, flow only happens out there in the big bad world. We get into flow when we have a sense of mastery, satisfaction, and confidence, when there's challenge, when there's anxiety, actually. Anxiety is one of the ingredients of flow states. We feel flow because we feel challenged and we're mastering it. So if we go out to play hockey and we start and we're overwhelmed and it's really scary, we feel anxious, and we may want to stay home week 2 because week 1 was scary. We want to avoid. Well, that's maladaptive anxiety. But if we push through that avoidance and we get out there and we start playing those hockey games, now we get into it. Now we can't wait for our next shift, even though there's anxiety on board, right? There's competition, sticks and skates and yelling coaches. If there weren't anxiety, there'd be no flow and no excitement. Imagine your hockey team wins every game 23-0. Boring. Boredom is not enough anxiety. There's a sweet spot for anxiety. It's the middle zone. Too little is boring, too much is panic. We don't have time to go into that part of it today, but what do you want in terms of that anxiety getting lit when your kids go in the world, when they get going again? You want them to be finding flow, whether it's in their academics, and I think this last question tells us that these kids sometimes get a bit of flow from their academics, which is great, whether it's playing the oboe, playing volleyball, hanging out with my friends. Okay, those are places where we get flow, making new friends, those kinds of things. We want our kids to go out there and be hungry for flow. As the pandemic ends and they get back out there in the world, their anxiety is going to go up, and you want to be there right beside them, minding those moments, being compassionate when the stress happens, letting them take it on a little bit at a time, and helping them find those places in the world where they get their flow. I think that was a great question to end with. Do you want to, where are you at, Claude? Do you think? I'm sorry, Andre.
I have one comment here from a viewer, a listener, is I would love to have my husband listen to this. And then the question was, will there be a link to listen after? Yes, for people that have participated, we will get you this recording. It won't be instantaneous. I have to figure that out. But as Dr. Russell has mentioned, anxiety, yes, we roll with it. Everybody, every human being is wired for it. But I also like the acronym FLOW. We have to flow with our gut instincts and reactions. And looking at the time, you want to go and flow and see your children, moms and dads. And Dr. Russell might want to call his 25-year-old to know where he's driving in Toronto. So Dr. Russell, I want to turn it over to a colleague of mine, Mrs. Stephanie Cercelli, principal at St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Secondary School. I'm just going to click Stephanie on here. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, Andre, can you hear me?
I'm going to send you live. Oh.
I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, good, thank you. I'm having some problems with my camera, so Dr. Russell, thank you. It's my pleasure to be able to speak on behalf of all of the participants and the staff tonight, both as a principal and an educator, but most importantly as a parent. I think your talk was so refreshing tonight and so meaningful for us because I know at this time of night, I don't usually have the time to stop. So even just having a moment to stop, to listen and think, and then reflect on the things you're saying was so powerful. What really resonated with me was how you talked about getting our children, giving them an apprenticeship in reality and how to be a citizen. And I love that line. I can picture myself using it. But I think what was really great is, as parents, you really made us feel like and realize that we're all experiencing the same additional stresses that COVID has created. And you made us feel like we're not alone. So thank you for that. And thank you for giving us the focus and reminding us that our goal as the parents is how to help manage our children's anxiety and raise emotionally healthy children. And you gave us lots of strategies, both in your talk and in the answers to the questions tonight, that will help us on how to learn to pause and identify our emotions, and then give us the confidence that we don't have to be those custodians for our kids' behaviors. So we hope that when, you know, hopefully the world comes back to a little bit of a different state, we can connect with you again, bring you back to London, and continue the conversation with us. Thank you so much.
In 3 dimensions, that would be great.
It will be.
And thank you, Dr. Russell. Is there a way, do you have a website? I know you have a book. Have you published more books for parents' interests?
Yeah, so the parenting book is called Drop the Worry Ball. You can get it on Amazon, Indigo, whatever. I shouldn't say Amazon. I shouldn't do big box stores. You can get it at your local bookstore. And there's some links on the website, Russell Psychology. Not a lot, I'm afraid. I should have a better platform there, but there's some links there. And right now, I'm actually working on another book on anxiety in particular, but I don't have that available for you.
But I'm sure it'll be a great read, just like Don't Drop the Worry Ball, your first book. So thank you so much, Doctor.
It's been my pleasure, guys, and sorry for the audio only, but thanks for bearing with us tonight, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, and thank you to all the viewers, watchers, listeners. Have a great evening, and tomorrow's Thursday, then Friday. Positive thinking. Thanks, everybody.